It was just an ordinary day, but for 5 inseparable friends, today would be different. The sun was shining outside, and the sound of laughter filled the air as they gathered in a cozy cafe. They were about to embark on something unique, a challenge that would push their limits and test their skills in ways no one expected. "So, are we really doing this?" said Lucas, the most enthusiastic of the group, flashing a daring smile. His friends looked at one another, eyes gleaming with a mix of excitement and nervous anticipation. The challenge was simple. Whoever could spend an entire day speaking only in English without making a single mistake would earn the ultimate reward, the admiration of the others. But of course, there was a twist. Every time someone made a mistake, they had to face a funny punishment. Nothing too serious, just enough to make everyone laugh and keep things interesting. And most importantly, this challenge wasn't just about speaking English. It was about stepping out of their comfort zones, taking risks, and maybe learning something new along the way. Before we start, make sure to turn on the subtitles and repeat after me as we watch the video. Every word you learn will help improve your pronunciation, the narrator said, in a friendly, upbeat tone. And just like that, the challenge began. They were ready to face the English challenge. More than that, they were ready to have fun, learn, and of course, laugh a lot. The first few minutes of the challenge were easier than expected. Everyone was speaking English confidently, cracking jokes, even attempting exaggerated British accents in the most hilarious ways. But deep down, they were all counting the seconds until the first mistake happened. The tension spiked when it was Marta's turn. She had always been good at English and felt pretty confident. But as she tried to order a coffee, she said without realizing, "I would like a coffee with milk and sugar and, the bread." The barista looked at her slightly puzzled and replied, "You mean the bread or the toast?" Marta froze, eyes wide, then laughed nervously. "Oh no, I mean, the bread. With coffee?" The confusion was clear, and laughter erupted all around. But it was short-lived, because the first punishment was about to go down. "Punishment!" Lucas shouted, pointing at Marta with delight. The rule was clear. One mistake, and you pay. "You have to dance the Macarena right in the middle of the square," he said, laughing at his own idea. Marta looked at her friends, but she knew there was no way out. She stood up, walked to the center of the plaza, with everyone waiting to see her performance. What seemed like a moment of embarrassment turned into a joyful event when Marta started dancing, and the rest of the group joined her. What seemed like a failure ended up being a moment of pure fun, shared laughter, and deeper bonds between friends. But Marta wasn't giving up. She knew that one mistake wouldn't stop her. It was only the beginning of the game. The group headed to the park, where they decided to spend the rest of the afternoon trying to complete the challenge. The energy was starting to dip. After some good laughs, everyone was beginning to feel a little more pressure. It had been funny at first, but now the mistakes were becoming more frequent and the punishments more creative. Now it was Pedro's turn to order something from a food truck. He had always been the most confident when it came to speaking English, and he was sure he was doing everything right. He approached the vendor and said, with the swagger of someone who thought they had it in the bag, "I want a hot dog with ketchup, and no, without mustard." He paused, trying to remember the right word. "Without, mustard?" The vendor looked at him for a second. "You mean you want it without mustard? Or are you talking about the ketchup?" Pedro froze. His brain just couldn't keep up. He stared at the vendor and with a forced smile said, "Yes, I want without ketchup. No mustard. The vendor smiled politely, clearly confused, but handed over the order. Pedro knew exactly what had happened. He'd mixed up the words, and worse, hadn't used the right sentence structure. That meant one thing. A punishment was coming, and Pedro knew it would be entertaining for the others. Lucas, as always, was the first to shout, "Punishment!" And with a mischievous grin, he added, "Now you have to sing a song in English for all of us, without messing up a single word." The problem? Pedro didn't really know any English songs. Well, except one, "Happy Birthday to You." Without hesitation, he began to sing, but quickly realized he was too nervous to keep a steady rhythm. He started tripping over the words, and ended up just laughing at himself instead. But instead of feeling embarrassed, he saw his friends laughing along with him. And something shifted. He wasn't alone in his mistake. The song was a total disaster, but it became a beautiful moment of connection. Every laugh, every slip-up added new energy to the group. The pressure was building. They were already more than halfway through the challenge, and mistakes were coming faster. Marta, Pedro, and Lucas had already faced their punishments. Now it was Anna's turn. She was determined not to mess up, but the nerves were kicking in. Walking into a clothing store to buy a gift for a friend, she tried to ask, "Excuse me, do you have this shirt in a smaller size?" But without realizing it, she said, "Excuse me, do you have this shirt in a smaller size? Bigger?" She immediately felt something was off. Bigger? What am I even saying? She thought. Trying to hide her embarrassment, the salesperson smiled warmly, but clearly noticed the mistake. "No problem," he said kindly. "I can help you find one in a larger size, if you'd like." Deep down, Anna knew it was a beginner's mistake, but instead of hiding, she took a deep breath and smiled nervously. "Well, this is embarrassing," she said, trying to correct herself and keep the mood light. But before she could say anything else, Lucas shouted, "Punishment!" And this time, the punishment was unexpected. You have to tell a joke in English to everyone here, without messing up a single word. The pressure was on. Anna had no idea what joke to tell. She stood there, frozen, trying to remember something. Funny, what happened next surprised everyone. Anna, with a shy smile, said, Okay, I'll try. Why don't skeletons fight each other? Because they don't have the guts." The room went silent for a second, then burst into laughter. The joke was simple, but Anna nailed the pronunciation and the timing. In that moment, she didn't just recover from her mistake. She brought everyone together. Things were starting to shift. The group realized mistakes were no longer something to fear. They were part of the learning journey. They were beginning to see English not as something scary, but as something fun and approachable, where even the slip-ups became moments of joy. The mood among the friends had completely changed. They went from nervous tension to light-hearted fun. Every mistake felt like a new opportunity to learn. And the punishments weren't punishments anymore. They were chances to be brave and creative. What once seemed like a tough challenge was now becoming a journey of growth for everyone. As they continued walking down the street, Marta, usually the quietest one, was next up. They arrived at a snack bar, and when it was her turn to order, she turned to the cashier and said confidently, "I'll have a burger and, French fries, please." The cashier gave her a puzzled look. "You mean chips?" "Right, yes, chips." Marta quickly replied, laughing at herself. She realized that in her mind, freeze felt natural, but the correct British English word was chips. It wasn't a big mistake, but she knew it was time to face her punishment. This time, the punishment wasn't as funny as before. Lucas, with a warm smile, said, "Now you're going to explain how to bake a cake." In English, without pausing. Marta hesitated for a second. But then, with a determined smile, she started. "Okay, first you need to mix the sugar and the flour. Then you add the eggs and the butter, and you stir, 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 until it's smooth." It was completely improvised, but she spoke with such confidence that she didn't even notice she wasn't nervous anymore. As she spoke, she grew more fluent, and when she finished, the group burst into applause. It was a small victory, but a meaningful one. Marta had started to believe in herself, not just in her English, but in her ability to overcome challenges. As the others kept laughing and enjoying the moment, the group began to see that each mistake was now a chance to express themselves. The jokes, the laughter, the slip-ups, they were all signs of progress. The challenge had become about much more than speaking English. It was about conquering the fear of making mistakes and celebrating the little wins. What once felt like an impossible task was now a journey of transformation, step by step. The day was coming to an end, and the group could feel the big moment approaching. There was something in the air, a mix of tension and excitement. The final challenge was just ahead, and everyone was preparing for the ultimate test. They gathered in a quiet cafe. The last task was simple, but terrifying. Each of them had to order something from the menu in English and have a short conversation with the waiter without making any mistakes. It seemed harmless at first glance, but they all knew this would be the toughest part. Pedro was the first to stand up, facing the waiter with a look of confidence. "I'll have a coffee and, croissant please," he said clearly. But the waiter gave him a puzzled expression. Pedro, now nervous, started stuttering. No, I mean, I'll have a croissant please." The waiter gave him a reassuring smile. "You're doing fine," he said, jotting down the order. But Pedro could feel the pressure mounting. He glanced at his friends, who were cheering him on. But this last challenge was really testing his limits. Then came Anna's turn. She stood up without hesitation, looking the waiter straight in the eyes. "I'll have the sandwich, please, and a small latte." Her request was clear, and she made sure to sound confident. But the waiter, more attentive than ever, asked, "Do you want the sandwich with ham or chicken?" Anna paused for a moment, thinking quickly. It was a simple situation, but doubt started creeping in. Then, with a firm smile, she replied, "I'll have the sandwich with chicken, please." Perfect response. Not a single mistake. Her confidence, something she hadn't had earlier that day, was now shining through. Her friends clapped and celebrated her small but powerful victory. But the challenge wasn't over yet. Marta and Lucas were the last ones to go. They were nervous, but knew this was their moment. Marta placed her order smoothly, and Lucas, smiling wide and showing no sign of hesitation, went last. Back at the table, the group laughed and shared stories. Something had changed. What once felt like an impossible task now felt simple. They hadn't just completed the English challenge. They'd discovered a level of confidence they never thought they had. The adrenaline was still high, but they all knew the true goal wasn't just ordering food in English. They had overcome personal barriers, and each mistake throughout the day now felt like a milestone. The challenge was over, but the impact would last a long time. The 5 friends were tired, but something was different, something that couldn't be explained with words. What started as a friendly competition to see who spoke English best had turned into a journey of growth and collective learning. As they walked home, Anna turned to her friends and said, "I can't believe we did it. I really thought I wouldn't be able to speak English all day." Pedro smiled and replied, I thought it'd be impossible too, but in the end, it was fun. And hey, I didn't mess up that badly, right? He laughed, and everyone joined in. But Marta, the most introspective of them all, stopped for a moment and said, with a shy smile, I learned that it's not about being perfect. It's about keeping at it. And now I can see that my English really did improve, even with all the mistakes. Lucas, always the optimist, raised his voice. Did you guys see how far we've come? We started so afraid of messing up, but now I don't even care anymore. Mistakes aren't the end. They're part of the process. And that's what they all realized by the end of the day. The true value wasn't in never making mistakes, but in learning from each one. English was no longer a scary beast. They had turned fear into motivation, shame into courage, and frustration into progress. Remember, every bit of practice makes a difference. Don't give up, Anna said, looking around at the group as the friends said their goodbyes and headed home. They knew that even though the challenge was over, their English learning journey had just begun. What mattered most was not stopping, keeping at it, and enjoying every moment along the way. If you liked the video, subscribe to the channel and watch the next story to keep learning even more.